where we give you a look behind the scenes at things that are happening here at Andrew Wommack Ministries and Charis Bible College. And this month, I've got Andrew Wertz with us, and he is now the Senior Vice President of Andrew Wommack Ministries. And Andrew and his wife, Jeremy, have been with us a little over 15 years. And I didn't always have a lot of interaction with him until recently when he got promoted. But man, he has been a blessing, and his wife, Jeremy, they've just done great. And we won't go into any of the details, but we had nearly a coup about a year ago, less than a year ago. And Andrew went to defending me at the potential peril of his own job. I mean, he proved himself that his heart was for the ministry. And since then, he's just risen up. And we now have Paul Milligan, who's been the CEO of this ministry for the last 5 years. And he's in the process of retiring. And he's transitioning out over the next 12 months. And so he's still with us. But anyway, we're raising Andrew up to take this place, and you're just doing a great job. So thanks for being with us, Andrew. Appreciate it.
What an honor. Never thought I'd be here talking to you, but it's been an incredible journey.
So we do want to give some stats and talk about what's going on in the ministry, because people don't always hear that, but also they're interested in the people that God puts in the ministry. So how did you and Jeremy even come to be associated with us? What happened?
Yeah. Well, I was a sophomore in college, and just kind of a typical college kid, raised Presbyterian, but really no relationship with God. I had never really even heard a salvation message. And I'm off to college and just going kind of my own way, just doing my thing. And one night after a number of my dorm mates came back from someplace that they were, and they thought it was funny. They had one of your cassette tapes, and I think it was the true nature of God or the full gospel, something along those lines. And they just thought it was funny to give it to me because I had been raised in a Presbyterian church. My mom was actually the church secretary. I was the spiritual guy. And so they gave it to me and said, well, obviously this wasn't meant for me. This must have been meant for you. Everybody laughed. That was the end of it. I threw it on the dresser.
They weren't ever going to listen to it.
No, absolutely not.
How did they get it?
I never found out. They must have been at some sort of an event, or maybe it had changed hands to them. I didn't think a thing about it. Tossed it up on a dresser and forgot about it. It had to have been several months. And then one night I'm trying to get to sleep because I had a big test the next morning. And as dorms can be, it was extremely loud, and tried to get people to quiet down. Didn't work. And I'm really frustrated. And I reach up on the dresser and I pick up a Walkman. This will date me a little bit, but a little Sony Walkman with the orange headphones. You put your cassette tape in. And I thought, well, maybe this will help me. And I put it on, pressed play, and it was, some heavy metal music, what I typically listen to, and that wasn't going to work.
Didn't help you go to sleep.
Not at all. So I slammed that up on the dresser, and as I did that, my hand brushed against something, and I didn't know what it was. And I picked it up and looked at it, and I laughed to myself, well, if anything could put me to sleep, it's probably this. And within 5 minutes, I was bolt upright in bed. You had kind of started the teaching by talking about who God really is. And from sitting in church all those years, I knew that stuff was in the Bible, but I had never heard it that way. And I just knew this was it. This was the truth. And I couldn't get back to sleep that night. I can't even remember taking the test or if I passed that test. But my whole world turned such a corner right there. And the rest of my time, somehow I managed to get the degree, but all I wanted to do was study the Word. And what was so special to me and Jeremy, and what just we're so grateful for, was not just that you sowed that free tape. I'm sure that's how that got there. But when I reached out to your ministry, there was a phone number on the back. And I called, I was a broke college student. I didn't have money to pay for product. And when I called your call center that first time, they said, we'd be happy to send you 3 of Andrew's teachings each week. And it's okay if you can't afford to give. And I couldn't believe that. And
Well,
sure
it
enough.
wasn't your faith then.
What's that?
If you couldn't believe it, it wasn't your faith that caused it to be.
That's true.
No, our partners enabled us to do that. And for those of you that don't know, Andrew's wearing this little dove on his lapel. He's one of our elite partners now, is what that means. And so, praise God. Now you're helping other people get the free teachings.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
and one of the first things we did when we came here was to serve in the phone center because it had been so instrumental in our life. And I just, the first time I met you was at a summer family Bible conference. We drove out from Pennsylvania, and we walked up at the end with the people that we came with to shake your hand. And I started crying uncontrollably. And I'm not a real emotional guy, but I just know in my heart that if you hadn't provided that teaching and if it hadn't been free, I wouldn't be here today.
So you were saying you weren't even born again at that time?
No, I'd never heard of salvation message.
So how did you get born again? Was it just you recognizing God was a good God and you yielded to him?
Yeah, so one thing kind of led to another. I was getting your teachings every week. I got plugged into a good church while I was there. I had other people kind of come alongside and give me the full gospel from that. I was also, hearing all of your teachings on those things. So it just, it set my life in a completely different direction.
So then how did you and Jeremy get here?
So we just, while we were on campus, we started a Bible study. Just sharing that we were just so excited about what we were learning, and it was basically just sharing what we had learned from you, and that grew and became a pretty large Bible study, a small church after we graduated for a while, and then we just knew in our hearts that at some point we wanted to come give back to you. It was just something that we just knew that we needed to do, and we didn't know if that was, for a short season or a long season, but we relocated to Colorado. When we first got out here, we thought we were just going to come and see what we could do. We weren't looking for jobs. We didn't even know how big your ministry was. We just wanted to help and give back.
So when was that you came out?
So it would have been around 99, 2000, right in there.
And so that would have been when we were over on Robinson Street?
Right.
So we weren't very big. We probably had, 20-something employees?
Well, we moved out to Colorado, and then we had a number of student loans. We actually ended up taking some other corporate jobs, tried to get our finances squared away. And 5 years later, we just woke up one day and knew it was time. And we were really excited for that. We came to Charis Bible College, which was still on Robinson. But you were just starting to relocate into the Elkton building. And we started school. We didn't know exactly what it was, we were here to do. We started Bible school. And about a month in, there was an interest meeting for the call center that was opening up over on Elkton. And we had both had call center experience earlier in our lives. And when we went to that interest meeting, they talked about you were adding more national stations. They needed volunteer phone ministers, and we just knew immediately that's
Let me
us.
interrupt because I know this story, and you mentioned that you both left other jobs and stuff, but you had just started working the midnight shift at 7-Eleven, and you were doing so well that they promoted you, and you became, a supervisor? Or you were over multiple locations, weren't you? And so you were making good money, and I mean, you walked away from something that was very profitable to volunteer in a phone center. That's amazing.
It was, God really gave us a season to pay off our debts. He supernaturally prospered us. I had gone from a third shift 7-Eleven employee, and 5 years later, I had 250 stores in Denver. And
wow, I didn't know it was that many.
I was their youngest market manager. But it was just a supernatural thing. It was God.
So is that the only corporate experience that you'd had?
I had had other jobs while I was in college and right after college, but that was the primary experience.
Oh man, God prepared you and trained you for me.
Amen.
That's a
I
blessing.
believe it, absolutely.
257 11 stores. That's a pretty big job.
But
That's
the awesome thing for us was when we started. I mean, your phone center opened at 4 o'clock in the morning, and because that's when your show was going off the air on the East Coast, and the ministry was growing. And for Jeremy and I to come in every morning and to sit in your call center and provide the same love and the same ministry to people hearing you for the first time that we received, boy, we couldn't have been in a better job. And
you could relate to what some of them were thinking when they called in.
100%. And I mean, you just talk about a blessing and just, I mean, it, you know, for all the people in your call center, I think the opportunity to represent you and be your voice to the people calling in for ministry and to be able to help them in that way, it's just a special.
So you started as a volunteer, but you grew in the ranks. Weren't you over the whole phone center at one time?
Yeah, we volunteered for about a year and a half, and I think there were only 20 or 30 employees in the ministry at the time.
Yep.
And then we were offered.
So this was when, 15 years ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Man, 15 years ago was what? That'd be
2004, 5.
Okay, 2005. So this was right after the Lord had spoken to me about taking the limits off God. And when he spoke to me, I had 28 employees. Okay. And we started growing, and it was around 2004, 2005 when things began to just really explode.
I know we were working here when you got that word and that revelation. And so I mean, when we started, it was the phone center manager, Cecil Paxton, yeah, and then Paul Stewart came in, and but I think the entire team was volunteer at the time.
Yeah, we had a lot of volunteers. We've gotten away from that because you can't depend on a volunteer.
Yeah.
They sometimes show. Some
so
of
much.
them have been very faithful, but I mean, you just couldn't build ministry around it.
Yeah. At the time, I mean, a normal day might have been, I don't know, 150 calls for the call
I
center.
remember when we finally hit 100 calls a day, we were dancing in the aisles. And now we've done what, up to close to 4,000 a day, I would
one
suspect.
Day. Yeah, we average over 2,000, and we might take 500,000 calls this year.
That's awesome.
Just amazing.
So you came in 15 years ago. You've seen a lot of change in the ministry.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be beneficial to some of the people that may be newer to the ministry and stuff, just to see your perspective rather than hear me say it. What's changed? How's the dynamics of the ministry changed?
Yeah, it's awesome. You know, Jeremy and I will just start reminiscing sometimes, and it's amazing how much this ministry has grown in every way in 15 years. But if we just start with the call center, and there was, when we came in, there wasn't really a training program. It was you just kind of put on a headset and do the best you could. And it was a handful of volunteers that were staffing it. And then, over 15 years, that went from a handful of volunteers. Now you have 100 paid ministers on the phones. And then there's about 40 more staff on that team that handle all of the email correspondence, your social media piece, prison ministry.
And the training that they go through now is intense.
It is incredible.
You would know it better than I would.
Yeah,
Are you the one that put the training program?
Jeremy, my wife.
Oh, really? Is she the one that did it?
Yeah.
I mean, we get compliments on this. We've had, I know Kenneth Copeland Ministries, and I forget how many, but there's other ministries that have actually come to see our prayer center because it's so good. And they've actually taken things from us and implemented it in their call centers.
It's been an amazing thing to watch it evolve. Jeremy was the first one to build a training program for us. And there's customer service, there's partner relations, and there's prayer ministry. But so many people that have come have just continued to make that what it is today. And it's an art. It really is. We can't have prayer ministers spend 2 hours on a call with people. And that can be difficult. So it really takes some training for them to be able to minister effectively, not rush anybody, but they need to get through those calls so that we're available for the next caller and the next caller.
Yeah, because our calls come in waves, and after
Yeah.
one of the networks has aired, you may have a flood of calls, and we don't have enough people to answer them, and so we
Exactly
have a
right.
lot of drop calls, and then they start calling people back when it's at a lesser volume. But it is an art.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I volunteered on the phones back during those early days, and they kicked me off. They said I couldn't answer the phones because I just told somebody, I said, pull your thumb out of your mouth and grow up. And they said, you can't tell people this. And I talked too long. And so I don't answer the phones anymore.
That's really funny. We had ministers that would tell people to take their thumb out of their
And
mouth.
you probably told them you could.
Yeah, we said, unless your name's Andrew Wommack, you can't say that on the phones. But yeah, it's so a normal, hour by hour, we might take 50 to 100 calls, and then your Daystar program or your TBN program goes off the air, and it spikes up to 250 calls all come in at once. And those teams need to figure out how to handle all that. And man, you challenged the team this year, so everybody knows. I mean, we came to you to give you an update on the call center. And we were proud that we were doing things the best we could, and said, we got about 6 to 7% abandons, which just means callers that don't get through because everybody's busy. And we said to you, that's pretty much industry standard, and that's good for efficiency. And you said to us, well, I appreciate that, but what do we need to do to have zero abandons? I don't want anybody that can't
Because
get through.
many of them, this is their very first time to contact the ministry, and they get busy signal, or they can't get through, and it's a negative communication.
Well, and a shout out to that team, because they took your challenge, and they've just done an incredible job.
We're down now below what, 1%?
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
I don't
pretty
know how they did it. I sure couldn't do it when I was managing the department, but it's been really amazing. I just have a couple stats for you. So they're handling, in addition to the calls of about 2,000 a day, 700 emails a week, 1,200 social media engagements where they're commenting and ministering and responding to people on social media. And we have 991 people enrolled in your prison ministry program that are being discipled and going through study lessons and sending those in every day.
So some people may not know about that, but we have a thing where we send them materials and they take tests, don't they? And we actually grade them and we give them, so we have a lot of prisoners involved in that.
Yeah,
We don't
absolutely.
advertise that as much
We
as
don't.
we should. We got so much going that it's hard to advertise everything.
Yeah, we talk a lot in your team meeting that we don't think there's anybody that understands everything that goes on.
I don't think I know everything that goes on. I'll learn stuff when they send out an email, and I'll think, I didn't know we were doing that.
It's exciting. It really is amazing. It's hard to keep up with all of it.
It's exciting to me because back not too long ago, if Jamie and I didn't do it, it didn't get done. And now we just give some direction and say, here's what we want to do. And you have these teams that go out, and man, it is so satisfying to me to think that the burden of all this isn't on me.
Yeah.
It's really good.
It's awesome. God has sent just some of the most incredible people. I mean, obviously completely loyal and so thankful for this ministry, but their work experience, their education, their abilities are just top notch.
We've got some of the most qualified people around. It's really amazing. Of course, Paul Milligan and Billy Epperhart are in the management, and those two guys are millionaires and very successful entrepreneurs, and they're giving us all of their time and effort, and man, I couldn't pay them for what they're doing. They're just doing it as a ministry to the Lord.
It's incredible to work with those guys. We have to pinch ourselves sometimes. It's just awesome.
And I don't know how this happened, but I've heard it many times, and I've heard you talk about it, that Caris and AWM weren't friendly to each other. They were competing for dollars, competing for the IT people. We need you to help us and stuff. And under you and Mike and Carrie Pickett, who are now over all of the Caris Bible College stuff, there has become a new unity in the ministry that I think is really productive and producing some good results.
Yeah, and it wasn't anybody's fault. It's just we grew so fast for a number of years, and we didn't really grow strategically. We just grew. There were so many things going on, so many people calling in, so many projects going on, that we were all just doing the best that we could. And one of the things that kind of happened in that is we kind of had Charis Bible College growing over here separately from AWM from one standpoint, but then our teams all had to work together kind of down line to get all that, everything done and make it work. What created a lot of challenge at the top, because we were looking at AWM and Charis Bible College as two separate organizations, but it's really never been that way. I mean,
Well, it was never that way in my heart, but somehow or another, as it grew, that's the way that the administration went.
that's exactly what happened. And, I mean, AWM, the vast majority of employees are Charis graduates.
Mm-hmm.
We like to say, AWM bleeds Charis. And, and obviously, Charis came out of AWM. And so, yeah, one of the highlights of my time and my wife's time here is Mike and Carrie came in to take over Charis, and they had been in Russia for a number of years, doing just incredible work. And their experience in the field was they tried to start a Charis Bible College and had a hard time getting much traction.
Mm-hmm.
But then when they brought in the AWM aspects of the outreach and the partnership programs and all of that, all of a sudden they started to see just amazing growth, and they planted schools all over Russia from that. So that was their experience. And then for Jeremy and I, we had been way down in the ministry, but we just saw that we ought to be working together. We ought to all be, just making our decisions together, working in conjunction with each other. We could be so much better instead of having two IT teams and two marketing teams, etc. And so I got promoted to VP of AWM shortly after Mike and Carrie were promoted to the VPs of Charis. And our first conversation was, it was just supernatural. We sat down, we didn't know each other very well at all. And they started sharing their experience, and it was exactly, so we were seeing it from the Colorado perspective and going, man, that's where we need to go. And they were bringing their experience on the field in Russia and going, we don't understand why in Colorado, Charis and AWM are two separate organizations. And we said, we really don't either. And so we just started talking about, man, we could do so much more, so much better if we figure out how to bring everybody together and unify the organization. We're more efficient. We work a lot better together. We have better ideas, and it's to get the Charis people and the AWM people all in the room at the same time to do the things that you're asking us to do. It's been incredible.
It's really good. And for those of you that are just watching this, he's been talking about Mike and Carrie Pickett, but they were in Russia for 16 years, and they established Charis Bible College and AWM office. They put my program on Russian television across 11 time zones. We actually reach more Russian-speaking people than we do people in the United States. And they did a lot of things. Now they're back here, and Andrew and Mike and Carrie, Andrew is over AWM in January. Mike and Carrie were over Charis, and so in a sense they were very equal, and this is what he's talking about, them coming together. But now, with Paul announcing his retirement, Andrew has been promoted to Senior Vice President. Mike and Carrie answer to Andrew, and yet one of the things I love is there's no competition. They're just totally fine with it. Mike and Carrie even came and said, if you are paying us too much, we'll take a demotion. We just are here because God called us, which that's not what we're going to do. But I'm saying that's the attitude, and it's really healthy. And we had a situation just, I guess it was by this time last year, we had a person in management in the ministry that it was toxic, and Andrew, he's the one that blew the whistle on it and exposed it, even at the potential risk to his own position. And it really proved to Jamie and me that he loved the ministry and was wanting to put the ministry ahead of his own personal things. So appreciate that. That's really good.
It was ugly, and it was truly somebody that was in a position of high authority and was misrepresenting you and Jamie and your hearts down line to the rest of the staff.
Actually passing out a book about how, being apostate, and I was at the last stage and just really trying to undermine me and stuff. And so I appreciate people that work for us. When you have 650 employees, like you were mentioning when you first came, there was only 20-something employees. And in 15 years, we've grown from 20-something employees to 650 employees. I think there's, you would probably know this better than me, but I think there's around 500 here in the U.S. and 150 worldwide. And how many offices do we have overseas?
I always forget, so
do you have stats with you?
I do.
See, this is one of the good things about Andrew is that he doesn't just fly off the seat of his pants the way I do. He's always got stats to do things.
So we've got 16 international offices, so those are the AWMs piece, and 64 Karis locations around the world right now.
And we did have 70. I often will say 70, and you'll hear Mike and Carrie quote 70. But what happened, we put in a hybrid program, which is a new thing. And like, for instance, in Atlanta, we had 4 Karis Bible colleges in Atlanta because of the distance and stuff. But now the hybrid program allows people to do most of it online, and then they just come 2 weekends out of the month, 2 Saturdays. And because of that, we've closed down some of these satellite things and drawn back, because now they only have to go 2 Saturdays out of the month. So it's decreased some of the locations, but we're actually reaching more people now than what we were.
And something we don't talk about a lot, but you've got 2,500 online students right now. And then we now have eCaris, which is the entire Karis experience on an iPad or an Android tablet that we've got hundreds of people on now as well. Karis is really great.
So you just got promoted to this position recently. I mean, in the last, month, 2 months?
Yeah.
So I know that Paul Milligan, it nearly killed him a year ago. All of the weight of this. He's run corporations with thousands of employees. We only have 650, but they would only have like 4 projects going at a time. We have, I heard 140 or 150 projects.
I just came from a strategy meeting to come over here for this, and we have all your directors in the room, and we're looking at everything that's going on for next year, and it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing how many things are going on at one time.
So my question to you is, how are you handling this in the short term?
Well,
You're
I've been
a young
blessed
guy.
with an incredible wife, and I think I shared with you, but we never saw this coming. Never in a million years. This wasn't even in our mind to have been here this long, and honored to be in these positions. But God just kind of cleared the decks in our lives over the last few years with other projects and businesses we had, and we, we're just in a healthy place to be committed to this. It's full time.
So it's not keeping you up at night?
Only occasionally, not too
You
bad.
gotta be honest
But the other thing that I have is Mike and Carrie. To be completely honest with you, and I know Paul didn't always have that. Just a network around him, and well, I know Mike and Carrie would do anything to help us get through the tough times, and they're always available, and Jeremy and I are always spending time with them. So it's really special. I think, Paul did an incredible job and led us through.
We doubled in 5 years under his leadership.
Man, and we're just building on the foundation that he's laid for us.
So for those of you that aren't aware, we have a good friend of mine, Dean Radke. He's also on my board of directors, and he came in 5 years ago and totally restructured the ministry to where it changed from a top down, you just give, commands and orders, to where we now have, and again, you can correct me, but it's 60-something teams in the ministry. Is that right?
Yeah.
So we now have teams, and these teams meet, and one of the things I love is that answers come up and questions go down. In other words, it used to be that people would have these things and they'd say, Andrew, what do we do? And I had to get down and deal with these
Figure it out yourself,
things.
right?
And I'm not a manager. I'm not, and I don't do real well at it. And so it was a burden on me, and I wasn't doing as well. But now we have these 60-something teams. And I send questions down. What are you going to do about this? Now when somebody comes to me and says, what are we going to do? I said, hey, questions go down. answers come up. You tell me what you're going to do. You give me some options. And anyway, my point for bringing all this up is we've totally restructured the ministry, and now we have these 60-something teams that Andrew is over, and that's how he manages. And hopefully that takes the burden that's on you for managing this whole thing and puts it on these people, and you're able to do it.
Yeah.
I hope you're.
Well, your meetings are rapid fire. Lots of questions, lots of things going on. And Dean Radke's Maximum CEO program, it's been just a complete godsend to the ministry. The best part about it, from my standpoint, so I came out of a world where I learned how to get things done, but at the expense of people, unfortunately. When Paul brought Dean in, and we learned that system that God gave Dean, the greatest thing about it is those teams, the way that it's structured, they're being discipled. They're growing, they're learning, they're seeing a bigger perspective all the time. Their voices matter. So they may be in an entry-level position for us, and maybe don't have a ton of responsibility, but the way that system works is they'll still be brought in to how do we best fulfill Andrew's vision and what he's asking us to do. It really brings everybody in, it helps them grow, it builds future leaders for us. So it's a great
Well,
deal.
I sure appreciate you and Jeremy being a part of this. We got Jeremy over here sitting here watching us, but she did not want to come on camera. She's like
we'll get
my
her there.
wife, Jamie, but you guys have been a great blessing. And for those of you who are watching, I just want to say that I think this is really good for you to meet some of the people that God has raised up, because I could not do what I'm doing. I have people all of the time say, how do you do everything that you do? Right there, Andrew Wertz and Mike and Carrie Pickett, and then all of the teams and the leaders that are under them. That's how we do it. And so I think it's good for you to see the people that God has brought to us, the things that God has done in their life to bring them here. And I encourage you to pray for all of us, not just pray for me, but pray for all of the people that God has brought to us to help run this ministry, because it is a big ministry. We have, I think it's around 70 million, if you include our foreign offices, around 70 million or more per year is the income, and we don't have hardly any money in the bank. We use every penny of it, and it's quite a juggling act. So I would appreciate your prayers, not only for me, but for all these people. So thanks, Andrew. Appreciate you. Appreciate all of you joining this. And if you haven't yet become a partner with us, we need people to partner with us, not only financially, but to pray for us and just be a part of what God is doing through this ministry. Thank you for joining us today, and join us again next month as we have another Inside Story.
During this episode of Inside Story, Andrew interviewed Andrew Wertz, who was recently appointed as the new Senior Vice President of Andrew Wommack Ministries. Like many people, Andrew Wertz learned he could receive free resources he needed just by contacting the AWMI phone center at 719-635-1111. Listen to these people share their experience of receiving free resources.
There were times where I was that person that called in for the free CD or the free tape. I was that person. And I love the fact that you can do that, but you just go online and everything is there.
Years ago, when I was a single mom and could not afford even to buy a CD, Andrew Wommack Ministries sent me free CDs, and I was able to go onto the computer and download and listen to his teachings. That sustained me.
I was minding my own business, leaving church in Okinawa, Japan, and a brother came up to me and said, hey, I had a big Bible in my hand, and he said, looks like you love Jesus. Listen to this. And it was a cassette tape, and I took it back to the Wertz. I listened to it, and I started ordering free tapes, and I would listen to them one after the next for months.
The reason why I became a partner is because early on, when I first heard about Andrew, I was going through a difficult time in life, and the word just really ministered to me. And I called that number, and they sent free resources to me.
What really touched me about Andrew is that he gives away all of his teachings. And if it wasn't for that, I would have never